Nancy Guthrie was not a headline. She was a person. She was 84 years old, living in the same Tucson neighborhood she had called home for decades. Her neighbors knew her name. Her church knew her face. Every morning, she took her medication. Every evening, she kept to her routine. She had doctors she trusted, family she loved, and a calendar with appointments she intended to keep. One of those appointments was scheduled for February 3rd. She never made it, because something happened on the night of February 1st. At 8:42 p.m., the medical device implanted inside Nancy Guthrie's chest recorded something. Her pacemaker registered an abnormal rhythm spike. Not a gradual change, a spike. By 8:52 p.m., that same device logged what medical experts later described as acute cardiac distress. Her heart was in crisis. And somewhere inside that Tucson home, someone knew it. By the time you finish watching this video, you will understand exactly what happened inside that house and why investigators say the evidence points in one direction. You will also understand why a single recovered device found miles away in the desert changed everything about this case. But first, stay with this moment. Stay with 9:30 p.m. Because at 9:30 p.m. on February 1st, Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker went silent. The signal stopped. The data went dark. The record ended. Pacemakers do not simply stop transmitting without cause. If you want every update on this case as it develops, subscribe to Against Crime TV right now. This story is still moving. The pacemaker going silent was not the end of the evidence. It was the beginning of it. The silence inside that device told investigators something had happened. What the rest of that house recorded told them everything else. There was no forced entry at Nancy Guthrie's home. No broken glass. No shattered lock. No sign of a struggle at the threshold. Whoever entered that house on the night of February 1st did not break in. They walked in. They knew the code. They knew the layout. They knew exactly how that home worked. And that single detail reframes everything. At 8:58 p.m., something triggered the smart speaker inside Nancy's home. It was not intentional. It activated by accident. Forensic audio specialists spent days on that short recording. They filtered the static. They isolated the frequencies. They removed the noise layer by layer. And what remained underneath was one word: please. That word was captured within seconds of the 8:52 p.m. cardiac distress spike. Investigators cannot confirm who spoke it or what it was directed toward, but they can place it precisely inside the window when Nancy Guthrie's heart was in crisis. And timing, in this case, is everything. At 9:22 p.m., the garage registered motion. At 9:29 p.m., the home security system was accessed. The correct password was entered. The cameras were placed into maintenance mode. That action required knowledge, not guessing, not luck, the kind of knowledge that only comes from being close to someone. At 9:41 p.m., a vehicle left the driveway. Calmly, no urgency, no emergency lights behind it. No 911 call was ever made that night. No ambulance was requested. No neighbor was knocked on. No emergency of any kind was initiated. Just a car backing out of a quiet Tucson driveway while an 84-year-old woman's pacemaker had already gone dark. Earlier that evening, someone had called a number connected to Nancy's household. The call came from a prepaid device purchased just days before. It lasted 14 seconds, short enough to seem insignificant, long enough to coordinate something. Every one of those timestamps pointed somewhere, and investigators already knew exactly where to look. The digital trail was building, but the human story behind it was about to crack wide open. For weeks after Nancy Guthrie vanished, one person said nothing. No interviews, no public statements, no appearances. While Nancy's family stood before cameras with trembling voices, pleading for answers, he was absent. While investigators executed search warrants and forensic teams mapped the timeline minute by minute, he stayed silent. That silence was visible, and it was remembered. Nancy's daughter, Savannah Guthrie, remained measured and public-facing throughout. She chose her words carefully. She did not say she hoped her mother would come home. She did not ask for prayers. She said this: "My mother deserves the full truth." That is not the language of someone waiting for a miracle. That is the language of someone demanding accountability. And then the silence ended. In a room packed with reporters and cameras, he leaned toward the microphone. He said 5 words. "I was there that night." The room reacted immediately. People had waited weeks for any movement. But before anyone could process those 5 words, he said 3 more. She was not alone. Here is what his statement confirmed, and what investigators say matters most. 1. He acknowledged being present inside Nancy's home that evening. 2. He acknowledged a second individual was there. 3. He acknowledged an argument had taken place. 4. He acknowledged returning to the home that night. 5. He acknowledged tension over financial decisions that were days away from changing. Nancy had scheduled a meeting with her attorney for February 3rd. The purpose of that meeting was to review documents tied to financial authority. Documents that would have shifted control away from him. She disappeared on February 1st, 48 hours before that meeting was set to happen. Investigators kept returning to one question. Quietly, deliberately. If Nancy Guthrie experienced cardiac distress at 8:52 p.m., why did nobody call 911? There is no dispatch record. There is no medical response. There is nothing. Just timestamps and a car backing into the dark. He said he did not intend harm. The 911 call that never came tells a different story. What do you think happened inside that house? The admission cracked the silence. But investigators didn't need the words. They already had the desert. What search teams found east of Tucson did not just confirm what happened. It confirmed how deliberate it was. At 10:05 p.m., the prepaid phone that made that 14-second call became active again. This time, it was not in Tucson. Cell tower data placed it in a remote stretch of desert east of the city. Sparse lighting, minimal traffic. The kind of road where 9 minutes can pass without a single car going by. 9 minutes. Long enough to unload something, long enough to bury something, long enough to make a decision that cannot be unmade. At 10:12 p.m., a second Bluetooth device connected near that same location. A second vehicle. 2 people. 1 remote desert. 1 narrow window of time. Investigators did not go in blind. They studied cell tower records. They mapped movement data. They used geographic analysis before a single boot touched the ground. Search teams moved in carefully. Drones scanned for surface irregularities. Cadaver dogs worked in overlapping grid patterns. The first dog stopped, sat down, stared at a patch of disturbed earth. A second dog was brought in independently. Same coordinates. They began digging. 2 feet down, they found fabric. Dark blue, heavy duty. Forensic analysis confirmed its fibers were consistent with material previously collected from inside Nancy Guthrie's garage. Then they found a metallic casing. The serial number confirmed it immediately. It was Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker. The device that had gone silent at 9:30 p.m., miles away inside her home, was buried in a desert grave. Removing a pacemaker is not incidental. It requires force. It requires intention. Once it is removed, its recording stops. The timeline goes dark. That is not panic. That is calculation. Subscribe to Against Crime TV. When this case breaks, you need to be here. Medical experts were very clear. Removing a pacemaker does not happen by accident. Think about what that means for everything he said at that press conference. The pacemaker was found. The fabric was found. But Nancy Guthrie has not been found. And that is where this case still lives. The evidence is on the table. The grand jury is listening. And one question still has no answer. A grand jury is now hearing testimony in the Nancy Guthrie case. Forensic experts have detailed the pacemaker data. Digital analysts have presented cell tower maps. Audio technicians have described the smart speaker enhancement process. Prosecutors are outlining possible charges: obstruction, evidence tampering, and, depending on what is ultimately proven, manslaughter. But the charge that changes everything depends on one unanswered fact. Where is Nancy Guthrie? Search grids are expanding. Ground-penetrating radar is being deployed in new sectors. Traffic cameras from highways leading out of the area are under review. License plate readers in surrounding counties are being examined. Every data point narrows the map. The teams working this case have not stopped. They have not scaled back. They are working right now. Savannah Guthrie did not ask for prayers. She asked for the full truth. And her mother's absence is not abstract. It shows up in the empty church pew, in the dinner table, in the end of a phone call that no longer comes. If you know anything about what happened on the night of February 1st, contact the FBI tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI. There is a $1 million reward and it can be claimed anonymously. Savannah Guthrie said the full truth, not, "I hope she comes home." That shift in language tells you where this family really is right now. Subscribe to Against Crime TV and turn on notifications. This case is not cold, it is not closed, it is moving. And when it breaks, it will not happen slowly. It will happen all at once. Be here when it does.